Before I begin, let me wish and extend on behalf of the entire Democratic caucus a happy and joyous Thanksgiving season. I'm sure all of you are looking forward, as we are, to going home for this uniquely American holiday. We just concluded a caucus where our focus continues to be putting America back to work. We received an update from the members of our Select Committee, and also we had the opportunity to hear from the President of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare as well. Our members still remain hopeful, even as the clock winds down, that they will be able to get something that is big, bold, and balanced for the American people. And what they mean by big and bold and balanced is putting America back to work. We have long held and continue to say that job creation equals deficit reduction, and continue to believe that that is something that we all ought to be able to come together on. We are proud of the fact that we have been able to both introduce the President's plan, to continue to bring pressure on the committee to address the issue of job creation, and have also, as a caucus, held more than 1,100 forums and town halls across this country, again focusing on what Americans truly want, and that's the concept and the dignity that can only come from a job. And so we're hopeful as we go forward this weekend, and we give thanks as America pauses and we face a holiday that's uniquely American, with hope that we can come together and truly embrace something that will put the country back to work, that will preserve and protect what Americans value in both Social Security and Medicare. And with that, let me throw it open to questions that you might have.
What do you say to some people in the Democratic Party who are saying the sequester actually is a better deal for Democrats than, say, a $1.2 trillion deal? Because you have the $500 billion in defense cuts, it doesn't touch Medicare or Medicaid, that in some ways failure is the best option that Democrats may have on the table right now.
Well, I never see failure as the best option, and I think Democrats continue to believe that job creation is the best answer. There's only, as you look out, and our own CBO has indicated, if we take the unemployment rate from 9.1 to under 7%, and as we head towards 5, which is generally regarded as full employment for the country, that takes care of more than a third of the deficit. And I'll tell you why we think this is something that should be joined by both sides. The other side has been saying they don't want to raise revenues. And I can understand how they get locked into these ideological positions, but here's one, that by having people go back to work, you're not raising taxes, they're contributing to their local, state, and municipal coffers. And so you're putting people back to work. What has us concerned is it seems that there's more concern that credit might somehow inure to the President than to the American people. And the President has been very clear about this. He said 2 months ago, we don't have 14 months to wait. We've now had 2 months pass. And still, though we thank people for coming together, at least around a veterans bill, one small portion of what the President has put forward, and one small portion of what we could do as a United States Congress.
Do you think, though, that the sequester is an option, a good option on the
Well, as someone who was not in favor of the process to begin with, we think that things should go through regular order. But when has there been regular order? When you have a cloture vote, we know from experience on our side of the aisle, when we watch 497 bills be blocked, what can happen. And of course, on the House side, there's always the opportunity for a poison pill amendment. The beauty of this committee is that there would be an up or down vote that would not allow for cloture or for a poison pill amendment, in which case we felt that would be a great context to bring forward a jobs bill. Not only the president's proposals, but the Republican proposals as well. I've heard them say more than one time they're concerned about their legislation that gets held up there. Eric Cantor has introduced a jobs bill. We think those should be heard on the floor. We think the American people ought to have the full opportunity to get back to work, to roll up their sleeves, to get the simple dignity that can only come from a job.
Do you think that the Republicans in this 3-month process have shown a little more flexibility on taxes than they were at the very beginning?
We've seen some gestures that almost seem to be sleight of hand. So any movement, I think, has got to be categorized as a movement in the right direction. But in the Toomey plan, when you put forward 300 but then take away 800, that seems more like sleight of hand to us. And any time anyone dares speak about revenue, Grover Norquist flies in, and all of a sudden there's a new round of pledges that are taken. I think the American public is taking account of this, and I think they're still hopeful. What they demand are jobs. And I think and believe and hope that there is still a path forward around jobs.
What did your super committee members tell you about their availability this weekend for talks?
That they would be available all weekend.
Will they be here?
We didn't ask them about their geographic location, but I assume for the most part that's the case.
Congressman,
You'd have to ask them, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
How do you think the public will react to a failure in the super committee? Would it be a sign of dysfunction of a?
Well, the public currently views Congress at an all-time low. I don't think it will do much to improve Congress's standing.
Could it hurt Democrats and Republicans equally?
Well, I think it's a false equivalence if it does. Certainly, people have said a pox on both your houses, but I think there's a huge difference between defending Medicare and Social Security and a desire to put people back to work versus protecting the nation's wealthiest 1%, not being willing to call upon any new revenues there, but a willingness to cut Medicare and Social Security, and a blocking of, seemingly, putting the country back to work. So I think it's a false equivalence, but how the American people will take, I think, will, they've seen a lot more of this, and in large part thanks to you. When have we had the kind of coverage since early September that this special committee has gotten? So I think the American people obviously are more aware.
Congressman, how much revenue would you like to see in a deal if it comes out of the super committee?
I would like, how much revenue would I like to see?
Sir, can you answer some sort of see you too?
I'm sorry, it's hard when someone asks a question.
I understand.
So let me say, no, what we'd like to see is a program that's big, bold, and balanced. And by that, as I said before, we think that by putting the country back to work, more than a third of the revenue needed to lower the deficit comes into play. That's the hugest amount of money coming into our coffers to deal with our deficit. So that's what we'd like to see first and foremost. Then we'd like to see a willingness to make sure that we're able to preserve the core programs that the country relies on, which is Medicare and Social Security.
But do you have a number in terms of revenue increases?
Whatever that takes to preserve those programs.
Mr. Larson, do you think that the White House should step in at any point and push these talks along?
I think the White House has stepped in, and I think the President learned a lesson. The President, during the whole debt ceiling debate, as you'll recall, went for a big, bold plan, and unfortunately had the carpet pulled out from underneath him. This has become a problem and that Congress has a constitutional responsibility as an equal branch of government to solve. It is part of a deal that was constructed. The President has a responsibility to live up to his end of the deal in this case, and that's whether or not to pass or veto the final product based on the discussions that emanated during the debt ceiling.
Mr. Larson, your district obviously is a very defense-heavy district.
Correct.
If this defense sequester kicks in, can you talk sort of in a microeconomic terms of what that means? Your some districts are more defense-heavy than others. Yours is one that relies on that as an industry. What does that mean concretely for the district?
Well, we know what it means from listening to Leon Panetta, that this, of course, would be very difficult for not only my district, but the military-industrial base across the country. And so that was long thought to be the motivating factor that would bring people together. The unity around the Defense Department in general, not only its industrial base, Chad, but also the men and women who serve and all the various programs associated not only with our men and women in uniform, but veterans as well.
Congressman, do you know if the BDA is going to pass today?
I do not know if it'll get the 2/3. I know that there were a number of, I think, let me categorize this as initial goodwill efforts that were put forward. And I commend a number of the Republicans who were attempting to do that. But I think with the backdrop of the committee, with the data coming out on Social Security and Medicare, without a glide path to get to balance that makes sense, made it a very, let's say, a bridge too far for a lot of Democrats.